But the Miis in this game, if you can even call them that, are just Mii heads stacked on top of a sportsmate's body like some sort of perverted Frankenstein's monster. I could make an entire video about the downfall and degradation of the Miis, but we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Going into 2006, Nintendo were in quite the tough pickle. The GameCube had been underperforming in sales for pretty much its entire existence. It's kind of embarrassing. And the recent releases of the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 quickly began to make the Nintendo brand look obsolete. If they were gonna pull through, they would need a console that could capture hearts from around the globe and unify the human race. And yeah, that last part never happened, but hey, a 50% success rate is still a passing grade. Wait, no the fuck it isn't. The Nintendo Wii, as we know it today, is one of the best-selling video game consoles of all time. And if you're around my age, you probably remember exactly where you were when you first got your grubby little mitts all over that Wiimote. The system just had such a fascinating aura around it, from the otherworldly menu music, to the bulgy 2000s UI, to even those wacky little Wii strap warnings that appeared before every single game. Seriously, every single game. Every single goddamn. At the center of everything, of course, was Nintendo's brand new avatar gimmick, the Miis. You'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who hasn't made one of these little guys before, and they were a massive part of why the Wii was such a huge success to begin with. The implementation of motion controls allowed players to become far more immersed in the gameplay than ever before. You know, at least when it worked. And being able to literally insert yourself into the game took that concept a step further. The Mii was the unifying aspect between the gamer and the game, and their presence on the Wii's ecosystem was so successful that they'd go on to become a core part of Nintendo's brand identity for the next decade. Ever since the release of the Nintendo Switch in 2017, however, Miis have been put on the back burner, slowly inching their way to extinction with each passing year. Like many of you, I've questioned what exactly happened that led to these goofy little guys getting shoved to the sidelines in recent years. And today we're going to answer that question. Join me, your lovable Mii historian GregCubed, as we go back and look at the surprisingly long and complicated history of the Miis and analyze their post-Wii future to see just where things went oh so wrong. Or don't join me, I mean, I really don't give a shit. You know, I don't make money off of this. I could take you or leave you, really. In 1986, Shigeru Miyamoto, or the Mario guy for those watching with social lives, was busy working on a game for a Japan-only floppy disk reader on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Originally titled the Make Someone You Know project, this original demo would allow you to create virtual avatars and animate their faces in pre-programmed scenarios. These were the earliest ancestors of the Mii, and while you can see a few slight resemblances in these early cave Miis, we still have a long way to go until they begin to evolve into what we know them as today. Unfortunately, we only have limited footage and a couple of screenshots from this game, as it was never fully greenlit by the higher-ups at Nintendo. This was probably the right call, as I imagine that your average gamer wasn't gonna pay full price for a novelty avatar creator with no real gameplay. I stole that. Despite being turned down, Miyamoto would continue to think upon and evolve this idea over the next decade, until a brand new iteration of the project eventually came into fruition in 1999, with the release of Mario Talent Studio in Japan. This was a quasi-sequel to Mario Paint based around creating and animating avatars, and it was only released in Japan to members of this old online service. As you can see, this iteration of the project was far more realistic looking than either the Cave Miis or the Miis as we know them today, and I hate them. I would literally light them on fire if I could. Since Mario Talent Studio left the impact of a wet napkin, I wouldn't blame you for thinking that this is the last time that we'd hear of Miyamoto's Avatar project until the Nintendo Wii released in 2006. And you'd be wrong, because God hates us and created the Game Boy camera. So the idea with this one was that you would use the Game Boy camera to take a photo of yourself and upload it to this GameCube game called Stage Debut, where like before you could make a photorealistic avatar of yourself and put them into zany situations. What kind of situations? Okay, so yeah, that game never came out, and I've thanked our merciful creator every day since it's been cancelled. At this point, Miyamoto had been trying to get his avatar creation project off the ground for nearly 20 years, but he'd finally catch his big break when he caught word of a smaller team at Nintendo working on an avatar creation system for the Nintendo DS. Miyamoto brought them aboard Nintendo's main studio, and helped shape the project into what we can finally see as something resembling an actual Mii as we know them today. While these proto-Miis never came into fruition on the DS, for once this wasn't due to the software being cancelled. Instead, this was due to the project shifting focus to a brand new console hell-bent on dominating the world. The Ouya. Oh, sorry, I mispronounced that. What I meant to say was the Nintendo Wii. Now that I've revealed that I know far too much information about a bunch of fictional avatars, let's forget I said all of that and focus on more Mii lore. God, maybe I do need help. As I mentioned in my last video, Miis were brought over to the Wii to be used as characters for Wii Sports, as the original intention was to use Mario characters. Thank God Nintendo remembered Italians aren't real. What the Miis brought to the system, however, was far more than anyone could have ever imagined. When you open up the Wii for the first time, right next to the game slot, you're met with the Mii channel staring you directly in the eyes. Immediately, the message is clear that in the scale of important features on this console, there's gaming itself, and then the Miis. And then photography. There's something very special about creating a Mii for the first time. It's easy to pick up and understand, and while the options are limited, there's enough wiggle room for creativity that you can make something really customized to yourself. Or Walter Hardwell White, I'm not your parent. That's what made the Miis so magical. Even though the options were pretty limited, it was just so much fun to see how far you could push the boundaries. Making Miis for your friends and family is fun and all, but when you finally manage to make a Chicken Little Mii for the first time, that's an event that you cherish more than the birth of your first child. Nintendo went all out in implementing these characters into every crevice of the Wii's branding, from featuring them in most of their first-party releases to even creating an entirely new game series featuring these characters. This started with Wii Sports obviously, but would go on to include games like Wii Play, Wii Fit, Wii Party, Wii Music, Wii Fit Plus, Wii Play Motion, Wii Sports Resort, and my personal favorite, Wii Tax Accountant. Most of these games, not Wii Music, were extremely successful on the Wii, and gave an extra incentive to fill out your Mii roster with as many friends, family, and abominations as possible. There was nothing more rewarding than starting up a game of Wii Sports Baseball and leading a team of Guy Fieri, Peter Griffin, Arthur, Alf, and I don't know, Newman from Seinfeld. If that's not enough Mii action for you, the Miis were also used in nearly every default channel on the Wii in some capacity, including some exclusive ones like the Check Me Out channel, where you could submit and showcase your Miis for people around the world to download, and the Everybody Votes channel where, well, you voted. Even the Wiimote was designed with this in mind, as they actually hold a minute amount of memory storage so you could transfer Miis from your Wii into the Wiimote and take them to another friend's house, once again proving that virginity breeds innovation. I don't think it's a stretch to say that Miis were highly influential on the Wii's success, and the higher-ups in Nintendo were not ignorant to this. Over the next several years, we'd see the Miis get milked for all they're worth on future consoles, unfortunately to diminishing returns. As the Wii era came to a close, the next console Miis would appear on would be the Nintendo 3DS. This wasn't their first rodeo on a handheld console, as a select few DS games actually supported transferring Miis over from your Wii. Miis weren't quite as prominent here as they were on the Wii, but they were still featured pretty heavily on the system. The 3DS of course had a new Mii creator that featured even more options than ever before to make your Mii customizable, and while I respect the inclusion, I just don't think it hit the same, even with all the new bells and whistles they added. The Wii was a family-centered console, so the Mii Plaza sort of acted like this centralized hub where all your friends and family could hang out. There was an important memory attached to every Mii in the Mii Plaza. They were there because at one point, we wanted them to be there. Except Pingo, I could take him or leave him. The 3DS, on the contrary, was a personal handheld device mainly meant to be used by one person. So while creating a Mii for yourself was just as fun as always, there wasn't really an incentive to create an entire roster like there was on the Wii. Nintendo did attempt to combat this, however, with the inclusion of a feature known as Street Pass. So if you never had a 3DS, basically there was this feature built in where whenever you passed another virgin with the system, whether it be by driving by them on the highway or just passing by them at the park, you would be able to meet up with their Mii in the built-in Street Pass Mii Plaza, where you could use their Mii in one of two games, Find Me and Puzzle Swap. Street Pass was incredibly important in keeping the Miis relevant on the 3DS, as seeing other people's Miis gave you a small window into their dark, twisted psyche. Sometimes their Mii would allow you to see what the creator might look like in real life. Other times it was, well, it's a gamble. It's a gamble. While the 3DS continued to carry on the Mii's legacy, it was around this time that Nintendo released the complete and utter failure that was the Wii U. Now the Wii U was interesting, because it was basically the Wii, but a lot more convoluted and a lot less fun. Nintendo did a horrible job marketing this system, running tons of cringe ads geared at small children and trying really hard to recapture that family-centered crowd the original Wii brought in. It didn't, by the way. Now, I'm one of the 6 people that actually had a Wii U growing up, so as you can imagine, I was bullied in school. Let's stay focused though. How did Miis fare on the Wii U? Well, the good news is, much like the Wii and 3DS, the Miis were heavily featured on the Wii U. The bad news is literally everything else about the system. It was around this time that people really began to resent Nintendo's failed shift towards a more casual audience. Miis, much like Nintendo itself, had become cringe. This was mostly bolstered by Nintendo's brand new social media platform at the time, Miiverse. If you've never heard of this before, well, I'm sorry to be the one to bring you out of your blissful ignorance, but essentially, from 2012 to 2017, Nintendo ran a family-friendly social media site specifically accessible on the Wii U and later the 3DS. It went about as well as you'd imagine something like that would go. Miiverse essentially became a breeding ground for shitposts and incoherent children admitting things that nobody asked them to. The service was tied into nearly every aspect of the Wii U. Even the Mii Plaza featured on the home screen would showcase random Miis from around the world via Miiverse, rather than your own flesh and blood creations like before. It's a shame that nobody bought the Wii U, because the Mii creator on that system was perhaps the most robust and expansive version yet. But you know, it was on the Wii U. Making Miis on the Wii was a universal experience. Making Miis on the Wii U was an experience only shared between social outcasts on a social media network overrun by toddlers. It was also around this time that Miis started to become less relevant in Nintendo's game library. Fewer games supported their appearance, and the only 2 dedicated Mii games the console got were enhanced ports of Wii Sports and Wii Fit, neither of which were as good as the originals. By 2016, Nintendo were in yet another pickle. They had not only become irrelevant to most of the gaming community, but they'd also become a laughingstock as well. Nintendo were going to have to clean up shop if they wanted any chance at surviving. And as we all know, cleaning up shop requires sacrifices. On October 20th, 2016, Nintendo unveiled for the very first time what we now know as the Nintendo Switch. This initial trailer stood in stark contrast to their marketing of the last several years, featuring almost entirely young hip adults in contemporary settings, old school rock music, and most importantly, no cringe dialogue. It was modern, it was sleek, it was cool, it was... Hang on. Where are the Miis? So much like the trailer promised, the Switch was the exact opposite of everything that Nintendo had built up since 2006. For better or for worse. Mainly for better, though. Aiming once again at the core gaming market, the Switch aimed to be sleek, simple, and to the point. Playing video games. You won't find any themes, overcomplicated menus, folders, or even music, really. Personally, I appreciated the new marketing strategy and the less bloated menus. On the other hand, I don't know, some music would be nice. I don't want to be all alone with my thoughts, Nintendo. It was also in 2017 that Nintendo officially shut down Miiverse, a sad day for anyone under the age of 7. Nintendo completely refreshed their brand, but perhaps the most important omission in the Switch's identity were the Miis. Now to be clear, Miis are still present on the Switch, they're just not as prominent as they used to be. The Mii creator is tucked away deep in the settings, to the point where a lot of casual Switch owners may not even realize the option to make Miis are even there. Not that there's any point in making Miis on the Switch anyways, as outside of making one for your profile picture, there's really no other application. Only a select few games incorporate them in any way, mainly Mario Kart 8 due to it being a Wii U game, and Smash Bros. Ultimate. I can probably count the amount of games that feature them on one hand, and dedicated Mii games have all but gone extinct at this point. Perhaps the biggest blow to the Mii race, however, was the release of Nintendo Switch Sports earlier this year. Yeah, we're going there again. I already covered this in my last video, but for a quick recap, Nintendo finally made a sequel to Wii Sports earlier this year, only to replace the Miis entirely with these Microsoft-ass looking avatars. Now, recent updates have allowed more use of Miis in the game if you so choose, but even then, you have to go out of your way to implement them in the settings, and they look just weird. They just plastered the Mii heads onto the weirdly uncanny body of these new avatars. How lame. Ooh. This, for me, was the exact moment it became clear that Miis were dead. A sequel to the game that brought them over to the Wii in the first place, now relegating them to second-class citizens. Again, it's unfortunate, because nowadays there's more customization available than ever before, but with how little Miis are prioritized anymore, it doesn't even matter. In the year of our Lord 2022, I think it's important to ask ourselves, do we still need Miis? The Wii came out at the perfect time and place, and some may argue that the Miis were a product of their time, never meant to survive into the 2020s. I think those people are dead wrong. Look, I'm not saying that the Miis have to be included in everything, but if you're gonna make a sequel to Wii Sports, the least you can do is include them. The gall to put their heads on the Sportsmate bodies just makes me sick. Golf? Delayed? How does that even happen, Nintendo? What is going on over there? Started on their photorealistic hands with fingers. They're supposed to have nubs, Nintendo. The Miis are supposed to have they just obliterated it. They obliterated Woohoo Island and everybody. It honestly should be allowed society to have billionaires, and that's why Nicolas Cage should have never tried to steal the Declaration of Independence. I let Switch Sports get me off topic again, didn't I?